Hello and welcome to the Empower Couples podcast, where here you get modern, non-boring relationship advice for you and your partner to communicate like pros, fight smarter, and stay on the same team no matter the challenge that you face. I am one of your hosts, Aaron Freeman.
And I'm Jocelyn Freeman, but you all just know us as the Freemans.
And this episode is the 3 stages of conflict: communicate better, de-escalate conflicts, and repair faster after arguments.
We are jazzed up. Yes, jazzed up because we just wrapped up our web class. 2 couples from around the world, and everyone ended, actually within 10 minutes, people were writing, "This is already so good." And throughout it saying like mic drop, and this was so valuable. And that's what we want. This was a free web class, by the way. And so the episode today, we're going to share how we break down, as Aaron said, like the 3 stages of conflict: before, during, and after, and give you a couple of the key takeaways from the web class. However, it will not be able to capture everything that we covered because we provided a lot of visuals, a lot of frameworks and skills and steps. So you just have to watch this replay. We are probably just going to have it available maybe a week. So go to meetthefreemans.com/links to go watch that replay. Everyone said it was extremely valuable. I think it's absolutely worth an hour of your time for everything we cover.
And it's an interesting way that we think about the stages, not necessarily seasons of a relationship, but in your day-to-day interactions. It's important to us to think about this in terms of before, during, and after conflict, which is a funny thing because you think, well, I'm not having conflict all the time. But when we break that further down, before there's any conflict, and maybe this is a large percentage of your time already, that's fine, but it's communicating proactively about your needs, and it allows for you to prevent a lot of tension and potential conflicts from even showing up.
Yeah, I'll add, not just preventing conflict through talking about needs, but talking about expectations. And in the web class, we gave our framework. I honestly can't believe we gave this away for free. Like, this is one of our, I feel like, most prized frameworks that we have because I value it so much. But we wanted you to get this because you can have the idealistic view of, the secret to happiness is don't have any expectations of people. That is not a reality, truly, especially when it comes to marriage, because if you're going to build a life with someone, you better bet you're going to have expectations. And honestly, I think you should, because it's about the standard. Now, expectations aren't commands. They aren't dictating like, this is who you must be for me. It's more so about just having the awareness that each of you have different ways you envision things going. And that goes with everything. You each envision how your weekend is going to go. You each envision how you're going to handle parenting situations, how intimacy is going to look, how you're going to handle finances, even the trip that you have scheduled coming up. You each envision and have expectations for the plane ride, getting there, what you're going to be doing. And so instead of resisting the fact that there are expectations, you want to have the awareness and you want to be able to talk through them as a couple. Proactively. That's the way we want you to think about communication. It's not just, oh, let's wait till we're already upset with each other. Let's just express the frustrations that we have. No, what about having more of a preventative mindset? Let's talk about things, and this was the key phrase I kept saying to people: set each other up for success. Set each other up for success every day, every week, as often as possible through proactive communication.
And the other part of this is you just don't live without expectations, and expectations kind of come off a little bit more like activities or actions, but those are only there because there's an underlying emotional need. And I hesitated with saying emotional because men listening to this, I don't want them to think I don't have any emotional needs, or that's somehow not what men deal with. But we all have emotional needs, and maybe it's a few less. It's certainly probably different for males and females. For me, or a lot of men that we talk to, it might be the emotional need of being respected, of being, prioritized, I think considered, still also that you're just kind. So like however that kind of comes across, it might even be that your partner shows desire and initiates with you. So there's a lot of these needs that we have, and a part of your satisfaction in a marriage depends on the level at which these needs get met. And then
Mhm.
how this unfolds is that your expectations are more like the way in which you see the actions playing out to meet those needs.
Mhm. Absolutely.
So you just don't exist in a world where there's not expectations, because you have needs, you have desires, and when those get met and fulfilled, you feel more satisfied. You feel happy,
Mhm.
right? So just think of anything like going to the gym for yourself, or a business venture, or your job. You set out to get a promotion, you set out for a certain month in your business to increase in revenue. So
Mhm.
that's an expectation. And when you fulfill it, you feel awesome about yourself. So
Right.
so how can you walk around saying that we're not supposed to have expectations? It's like, well, you're just supposed to live with this never progress, don't desire anything
Mm.
more than where you are now? No, absolutely not. It's just people don't know how to handle or communicate these expectations, because when they go unmet, yes, that's what leads to dissatisfaction. And ultimately, when they're not expressed, that's kind of our transition into the during conflict. It's
Right.
kind of what causes tension. It is what causes the potential for a conflict cycle.
Before we go to the de escalate conflicts during conflict, I want to just say that one of the phrases that we said during the web class that really hit home was, we know that when you two are working hard, whether that be with your kids, your careers, a combination of your responsibilities, the limited time that you have together in the evenings and the weekends, you're like, I don't want to ruin our time together. So I don't want to bring up this thing, whether it be this frustration you have, an unmet need, an expectation, a frustration. And so it can continue to be put off later. I don't want to ruin the weekend. I don't want it to become an issue. And so that's why we're big advocates for having the weekly family meeting. Because if you know that once a week you are going to have a constructive check in and you're going to be able to openly share with each other, you're not going to feel blindsided by each other, that you can, in a sense, hold off at times. Now, of course, there's topics that need to be brought up they're more time sensitive, they need to be brought up throughout the week for whatever reason. However, a lot of the topics we find with couples can be, in a sense, saved for that constructive check in. So, if you don't have our family meeting guide, that's also an opportunity with the web class. You can actually get a discounted bundle of our popular guides. But, Aaron, why don't you segue us into the de escalation?
Yes, and we really needed to start with expressing expectations and needs, because when that doesn't happen, either you're not expressing the expectation or need, or you have expressed it and maybe you weren't clear enough on the action, or your partner does not follow through. What you have is this environment within yourself where you can move on to the tasks of life, and you can act like that's not a big deal, some version of that. But it doesn't actually go anywhere. Your need is there, need for respect, for safety, security,
Intimacy,
yeah, intimacy,
connection.
connection,
Mm-hmm.
closeness, whatever you want to put in there, that's there. Even if you're focusing on just getting things done. So what happens is some event, and this is why conflict can be uh, complex,
Hmm.
because my partner can do something. There can be a facial expression, there can be a tone. The subject of the conversation can be a dishwasher, or spending, or a credit card expense, or something about the child.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's a reaction that happens. And it's like, why are you making that subject a big deal? Well, guess what? It's not really about that. That is a triggering event that is bringing up the emotion around that underlying expectation and need continuously being unmet.
Mm-hmm.
Again, whether you expressed it or not, it's unmet. So here you are. And what else would you feel? This need is out there. This desire is out there. It continues to go unmet. It lowers your satisfaction. Maybe you feel anxious. Now that has to start to have you feel like maybe they don't prioritize me. They don't care about me as much. So now it can be a random event that triggers all of that emotion. Now, we don't initially think about, oh, what's my need here? What we're present to is the upset emotion, or the
Mm-hmm.
negative emotion, as we would label it. So I feel, let's say, criticized,
Mm-hmm.
or I feel judged.
Ignored.
My reaction, that this is what escalates things. Even if my perception is not correct, but I feel judged, I feel disrespected, now I react.
Mm-hmm.
And my reaction to my partner then brings up is almost a triggering event for my partner, as in they have a fear come up and then they react.
Mm-hmm.
Their reaction back to me fuels me or almost gives me validation to now have a stronger fear
Mm.
and reaction cycle. And you can just see this spirals you. So you're like, how did we land in this place where we criticize each other?
We brought up the
I
past.
brought up the past. I compared you to one of our parents.
Mm-hmm.
We raised our voices. Someone walked out.
Mm.
And it's like, it seems like that was all over where a dish got put,
Mm-hmm.
but it's not. That was the event that reminded you within yourself that there is an unmet need or expectation that has continued.
Yeah.
But you get caught up in this cycle.
And that's why the prevention side of things, as we talked about, is so key. However, again, it's going to happen from time to time. So, one of the big themes from the framework, and that's why the visuals of the web class will be really helpful because you're going to see the framework we're talking about verbally right now. You aren't going to always, maybe never, that's a strong word, control your feelings. That you can definitely work to have less intense internal feelings come up
Mm-hmm.
and be able to work through that trigger and why is that there. That's what a lot of people refer to when they talk about healing. However, the focus instead is I do have control over my reactions.
Mm-hmm.
It's not easy. It takes an immense amount of commitment and practice, but that muscle can get strengthened. I promise you, just like you get better at any sport, you get better with anything that you want to, baking, art, something in the yard. You aren't great at it at first. But when you become committed and you repeat that task over and over, you can. And so the muscle of de-escalating things, which in this context, we're just simplifying it down to recognizing the feeling coming up for you and then choosing a different reaction, more so responding than reacting. We've got to slow down our reaction time and say, okay, I'm feeling pretty mad right now. I'm having that inside, but you know what? I already know the song and dance. I already know what happens when I just do my thing and then they do theirs. What is the definition of insanity? Doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. So you already know the song and dance of how you provoke each other and how you poke the sensitive spots and the things you say and raising your voice. So it's time to handle things a different way. And so slowing down that reaction time, choosing a more constructive action, and just that will go a long way to feel safer with each other emotionally, to feel like even if we bring up hard topics, even if we bring up frustrations with each other, even when we do the family meeting, if one of us takes something personally, because that can happen from time to time, we won't wage war on each other. We won't do damage. We won't hurt each other, wound each other verbally, or have it feel like, why did I just get yelled at? Or why did I get such a disrespectful thing said to me? That's what we're saying is not okay. And final thing I'll say before we go to the repair step is that I mentioned this and really people put a lot of fire emojis and they were like, yes, yes. If you are a parent like us, and we know not all of you are, and that's fine, but if we are parents, it is our profound obligation that they see healthy conflict. I am putting that responsibility on you. I am challenging you to level up. They can hear it from the other room. So you might think, oh, we're in our room, you're raising your voice. They can hear it. I remember that as a kid and as a teen myself. Okay, sure, they're in their room, but I still hear them. It still feels intense. I see the way they're giving each other the eye in the kitchen. I see the scoffs. And so it is mission critical that we challenge ourselves, we devote ourselves to showing them healthy conflict, to de-escalating things and not waging war.
And at the end of the day, I think you can focus on the de-escalation. Like, it does not need to become something where you do more damage to each other. Now, that isn't to say that you won't have times in your marriage where certain events trigger a stronger emotion and that you still react. Again, let's call this on a scale of 0 to 10. Maybe you react at a 4. right? I think all the things you were talking about were like reacting, like you really lose it. You're
Mhm.
flooded. You're reacting at like a 8 to 10, and I think the real practical side of marriage is you're still going to have these times where, again, this emotion comes up, but and you don't do a great job of self-regulating, so you react now at, let's say, a 4.
Mhm.
That's fine so long as you have a process of repairing. So that's what you said. You want to display to your children that you can have healthy conflict, and more so that you can just have conflict come up, but you can repair it. And showing them how to repair
Mhm.
is a huge example that you can be to them. Number one, you're not giving them an unrealistic expectation for their own future relationships that you should never have any problems.
Mhm.
That's not realistic, and being a demonstration that that can come up and you can handle it together and you can even react a little bit. You can, make it a little bit worse, but now you can repair.
Mhm.
So even if when the conflict cycle happens, there's 5 steps, which are our 5 R's, which if you're a listener, you're much more familiar with. So let's just sort of clump the first 3 together. You both realize that the conflict cycle went further than maybe it should have, and you say, all right, we need to repair this. So both take some time and you're going to reflect. You're going to reflect on not where your partner was to blame, not stewing and thinking about how they need to come apologize to you and like own up to what they did. You have to make this shift to start to think about what was likely the real root cause. At the end of the day, since we're talking about this thread of expectations and needs, likely one of the root causes is an expectation or need that's still unmet.
Mhm.
So, with that, then you start to consider, well, I played a role in this.
Mhm.
And
They didn't argue with the wall.
yeah,
You know, like
and really
you were.
don't necessarily think about percentages.
Mhm.
Oh, my partner is 100%. Well, they're not 100%. At a very minimum, you are 2% at fault.
You said 3
I
on the
know.
web class. You can't
I
change
changed
it.
it.
They're at least
All
3.
right, fine. You're 3% at fault. Now, it's just that mentality, right? So when I'm reflecting, I could still be upset, and I think that you were in the wrong, the majority.
Mm.
So long as I have this mentality that let me think about my 3% at least, right? That gets me more quickly into this reflection of trying to look for where I have responsibility.
Mhm.
And I'm sure that as you look at your 3%, you'll realize your 3% was probably more like 15. And then when you consider what you could have done differently, you're like, all right, maybe I'm like at 40. And then in some instances, maybe you're like, I'm like really 80%.
Mhm.
So the percentages don't matter so long as you adopt this idea that you have a certain percent. And that
Mhm.
as you reflect, you're looking for where did I take an action that impacted my partner?
Mhm.
And with that in hand, now your conversation for repair is way more effective. And you
Mhm.
just start by sharing those 2 things. Hey, in this time that we had to reflect, for me, I think the root cause is there was an expectation that I just never even expressed to you.
Mhm.
Or, yeah, that's probably a good
Mhm.
example. Then I want to say, but really thinking about that situation, number one, the details don't matter. I really take responsibility that I raised my voice quickly and I really put you down.
Mhm.
And I take responsibility for that. I'm sure you felt pretty disrespected.
Unloved.
Yeah, you felt unloved. And I just take responsibility for that.
Yeah. And one of the things that can make the responsibility piece challenging is we can, in a sense, give ourselves a pass or have an excuse for our actions if we say, well, I only did this because you did that.
Oh, yeah.
You know, like as if your reaction was just a reaction to them. And had they not done that, you wouldn't have done that. You'll forever
Mm,
stay trapped if that is the mentality. What you have to force your brain to do is say, you know what, regardless of my partner's actions, and I'm
mm,
sure some of them weren't kosher, right? Like I'm sure they had some things that they said or did or how they were acting during it that weren't kosher. However, you only have control over your part, and so, what is your responsibility separate from any of their actions? You can't have them entangled with each other. So, it's just flat out. It doesn't
mm,
matter that they did call me a name and it was harsh. And
mm,
I also want them to follow the repair process from the Freemans.
Right.
We've got the Making Up and Moving Forward guide. We're going to do this. So, of course, they've got to take their ownership too. But you know what? Regardless, I yelled. And that isn't how I want to be acting. That is not what I'm committed to. For myself, for our children to see or hear that, that's just not what I believe should be happening in our marriage. So it's just that ownership and separating it from an excuse for your part because of your partner's actions.
Mm-hmm.
So repair is challenging. It
Yeah.
is, because it's very easy to just see them as the problem, the villain, the reason that you acted a certain way. But to Aaron's couple of points, you can't let your brain go to the catastrophizing and feeling hopeless, and because that's where the brain can go, especially if you have had a series of conflicts. They've been getting more escalated, things aren't getting resolved. The brain will start to feel more and more like maybe the relationship is a problem, my partner this, and kind of feel confused, hopeless at times, lost. What do I do? Discouraged. And so it's like, okay, let me let my self feel that for 3 to 5 minutes. And then let me focus on the root cause. Let me focus on the responsibility. I said this and it really hit home on the web class. The time after the conflict or the argument can hurt more than the argument itself. Because think about it. Sure, we're hurt and we're wounded from that conflict and it got heated more so than we want. But then if you start to feel like, wait, we've been disconnected for 2 days. They haven't said anything to me. I haven't said anything to them. Now it's been 3 days. This feels terrible. This feels awful. When that perpetually is the way that you two handle conflict, man, it eats away at your trust, your connection, your love. Truly, like we see when couples get to those places, it comes down to a lot of unrepaired conflicts or that argument hangover lasting a long time because you let each other feel terrible for way too long. And we just think that life is too precious for that.
So summarizing this, and we know this wasn't wasn't like a master class in these 3 stages, but
That's
that's
why
why
we
we
have the
did
web.
this web
Yeah.
class. So in the link in the show notes, go ahead, and it's the replay. So there's no time. You can just click on it and start watching it. And today we just wanted to touch on this because of all the episodes we've done. I'm not sure we've brought these 3 stages together. And when we think about the basis for a relationship and its interactions on more a day-to-day level, to be moving in a positive direction, to be connected, to be on the same page, even if challenges come up, even if you do a little damage to one another, right? The process comes down to these 3 things. We like to think of it in terms of before, during, and after. Before is all about, are we communicating and expressing our needs and expectations? There's more to it, right? Like, are we clear on the action? Are we making agreements? That's the basis. And the better you do that, the more proactive you are, the more you prevent things, the more you prevent conflicts, which is the next part, because you don't get rid of all of them. You'll have these little things that pop up. You'll have unmet needs and unmet expectations show themselves that you couldn't have foreseen. So, okay, that brings up some emotion for you. But so long as you're able to de escalate and self regulate from the normal reaction, now you're really de escalating that conflict. And at the end of the day, now maybe we're at 10% of the time, you do get caught up in that cycle. But so long as you have a process that you can trust, that you both can use to actually bring repair, then you don't have to be afraid of having conflicts either. They're not going to escalate, but you can really engage in it, knowing that this isn't going to last very long. We're not going to have a long argument hangover, and we're going to repair from it. And if you really go through the 5 steps, you realize that you use conflict to learn something and to grow.
Yeah.
In which case, conflict, I know people aren't with this, and I get it. It's not like you get the lesson immediately. But as you start to use this framework, you realize these conflicts can be used to benefit us. And maybe we realize it in an hour. Maybe we realize that in a week. You and I went through a really hard time in 2022. And it probably took from after we completed that investment, 6 months later, I think we were able to see the benefit. So even though it took like a longer time, it's that literally we feel like we can face anything.
Yeah.
And with these steps, we can repair and we can actually eventually see how it benefited us.
I love that you said being able to face anything, because we know that couples are facing various things right now. Some smaller hurdles, some bigger. Some of you are in a decent season, just working through, a few kinks. Others are in a hard season and really trying to bounce back, really trying to repair, try to rebuild. And so at the end of the web class, actually, which is invaluable, truly, you just have to go watch that. Make sure that you take advantage while we have the replay available. But at the end, we showed a picture where truly we have 700 couples on a wait list to do private sessions. And we share that because we don't want you to think that's the only resource. We cannot serve all of you privately. And that's why we create these additional resources like our guides, etc. But there was something that was requested many times, and we did not plan on creating it, but we kept getting the ask over and over and over again. And so, drum roll, but we have a brand new resource, which is called the Rebuilding Us 30-Day Couples Challenge. So for those of you, if you're one of the 25,000 couples who've done our first 30-Day Couples Challenge, which is all about prioritizing us, refilling your love account, improving your communication, that's an incredible place to start. And we know that some of you who've already done that want to do this level 2 challenge. You can also just jump right into this one too. I think reading both pages to see which one feels best to start with if you haven't done either one. So we created this thinking about that busy lifestyle. So go ahead and go to the link in the show notes. It's also mycoupleschallenge.com/rebuilding. So you got to put that /rebuilding to get this new challenge. But we are so excited for you all to experience that. It is also starting on the 1st of the month. And so make sure that you experience this level 2 challenge. We really created this for all of you to get, in a sense, like coaching from us privately without having to work with us in private coaching. So we really are excited for you all to experience that. But we hope this overview was valuable, this episode, and that you really take advantage of our resources, because we've got your backs. We're rooting for you. We believe in you, and that you can overcome any of the challenges and the hurdles that you face as a couple. So with that, we will talk to you on the next episode.